What's going on, everybody? This is another video of Indigenous Podcast. Thank you all for coming on. Before we start with the amazing guests that we have, I just want to bring up a couple points. Unfortunately, Juan Chiloa, fellow channel partner, will not be on tonight. He is, as you all know, currently visiting his tribe in Mexico, and we'll save a lot of that information for another video and when he's ready to talk about it. A few other things I wanted to bring up. We just had our Twitter account opened up and made one tweet, so we've got a few followers there. So thank you all that's followed us there, and we'll have more updates, as I said, in the community tab. That being said, we do have two really great guests that I'm going to introduce here now, and we'll go from there. So, Vivian,
Hello.
thank you for coming on. If you wouldn't mind, please, wanting to introduce yourself to our wonderful viewers and guests.
My name is Vivian Lorena Gonzalez Cardona, or Vivian Lorena Gonzalez Cardona. I am in the U.S., but I was born in Colombia on Embera land. I have Muisca descendants, and I'm currently on Pennacook land here in New Hampshire.
Oh, amazing. And you've lived in Colombia for a little bit of time.
2 years.
2 years. Wow. Okay. Very cool.
That's a baby.
Yeah, that's great. I was actually in Colombia too, and I could get into that story a little bit later, just having to deal with like family adoptions and whatnot. But I was there at a young age. But yeah, and we just wanted to introduce Juan really quick. Juan, thank you for coming on. But you all have met Juan before.
Hey everybody, my name is Juan Pablo Sierra. I was born in Brooklyn, but my parents are from Colombia. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Now, Vivian, you lived in New Hampshire for, if you don't mind me asking, how long? Because no offense, but that's a very interesting place for someone from South America to live. Because most people that I meet from South America are usually living in, Texas, California, Illinois, and you are in a very interesting location in the country. So surely you might understand my curiosity.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, the more I learn about my family, we are kind of nomadic. And it's kind of like one of the markers for me realizing that there's indigeneity in my family. I have not a lot of family here in the States. We're one of the few. We did come in from Mexico. We ended up in Queens, and then North Bergen, New Jersey, which are Little Columbias, and then eventually in Boston, in East Boston, which is Little Columbia. And now I'm in New Hampshire, and yeah, we keep traveling. I was talking to my mother the other day, and she was like, "Why don't you just go to Canada?" And I'm like, "I don't want to keep moving. I'm done with the nomadic lifestyle, Mom." She's like, "But why?" So, yeah, I made it here because I was in a relationship, and I like it. It's beautiful. I'm in the mountains again. My family comes from a very remote town in the Andes called Viterbo Caldas, and so I'm just in another valley, like where I was in Colombia.
Yeah, Colombia is a very interesting country because every city that I see is always like in a valley. Like, what's that city called? Not Bucaramanga. Is it called Bucaramanga?
Bucaramanga.
Is that what it's called, right? I think in the city.
Like every place, like Medellin, we're in the middle of mountains, of jungle.
Surrounded.
It's beautiful. Yeah, everywhere you look.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting because, my life is pretty much, and I'm not sure I didn't tell you much about me. It's just like I was born in Peru and I was adopted and I've lived in Illinois for a lot of my life. And it's just, very flat cornfield type of lifestyle. But, it has its ups and downs. But yeah, that's interesting. You've been in quite a lot of places.
Yeah.
Now, I think we're going to talk about your activism, and just maybe because I saw your Instagram and you had that on there, I was like, oh, cool. So she does some things for Indigenous people. So maybe if you could give us a little bit about that, please.
Of course. So, I mean, it's in my blood to resist. It's in my blood to speak up. It's in my blood to be really brave in moments when you don't even know how you're gonna, stand up. My father used to go down to DC and protest for immigrant rights. My mother is actively um, protesting and advocating for workers' rights. And so, I mean, me advocating for my whole life in general, it was like easy for me because they're also, fighting just to get treated fairly. Um, and prior, I have aunts in Colombia who do the same. My whole family, I mean, we've always just been this way. We can't stay quiet when we see injustice. So, in all aspects of work, I mean, I used to be a punk rock promoter. And even in that, I was an activist for pushing for women being in a male dominated scene. And now I, I am involved in content creation. And yeah, on all my platforms, I make sure that I share as much as I can about Indigenous rights, about missing and murdered Indigenous women, about water protecting, about just South American issues. Because the thing is that there's not a lot of media coverage, and there's been protests in Colombia right now for so many things. People are banding together, and I'm so excited for it. I'm happy for it because the more media coverage, the more Northern Natives will see it and want to connect. I mean, there's a few shows that show that we're trying to connect, that we're trying to be on the same team. And so, I'm part of those voices that help bridge the gap.
That's awesome. And first, I want to say that's really great your parents do that, you know, for immigrant rights and whatnot, because I know.
Yeah, that's fucking badass.
Yeah. Thank you, Juan. Yeah, because I know, like, unfortunately, a lot of our administrations, I mean, obviously, we've had a lot of issues with how we handle, immigration into the country, and it's sad, even now. We see what's going on at the border, especially, I think, with the Haitian crisis as well. And, we can go back further and see that, unfortunately, our past governments had a huge hand in as the reason why we have refugee crisis as well. And we don't have to talk about this too much because it's another story. But the American Fruit Company, the issues in Honduras, and tons of civil unrest. Like, unfortunately, our American hands have been placed in that, and that's why we see what we see today. And I have people, or I know people that like complain about that, and I was like, well, it's technically our fault. We
Yeah.
didn't have to like get involved in that. We could have just let them figure out their own issues. But we helped fund
Coups.
dictatorships, coups. Like, we helped with military guns. Honestly, I'm not surprised that we didn't have like U.S. soldiers in. I mean, I know they trained the nation's militaries to attack like these indigenous people or whatnot. But I'm surprised they didn't have people just killing off indigenous, you know, people in
No,
general.
and on top of that, it goes even deeper because, for example, my governor has ties to oil companies in South America, his
Yeah.
whole family. And it's like, of course, they're voting for these things to happen so they can protect their assets. And it's really disturbing because, I mean, down to the governor level, like, it, and you don't want to say it's systemic. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree with you. Isn't that Ivan Duque? Is that, I don't know how do you pronounce his name.
Duque,
Duque. Okay.
Yeah.
Ivan Duque. Yeah.
Ivan Duque. Got it. Thank you for correcting me. Juan, I don't know what your opinion was on that. You're free to speak your piece. Or, because I thought I heard you say something. But if not, that's cool too. So yeah, especially with the issues regarding the civil unrest in the capital, I think was in Bogota or certain other areas.
Oh, it's all over. that's the thing that makes me sad, is that the coverage isn't big at all whatsoever. And I mean, when it got really bad, even my grandmother was moved to a safe location. I mean, it was getting pretty bad, and like nobody heard about it. I was, you know, keeping in contact with my family because it was getting really dangerous. Because it's already dangerous to begin with, and then add a lot of protests and murders and kidnaps. I mean, all of the same propaganda, all of the same. It all happened in South America too, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in Colombia. I mean, it
Right.
was crazy to hear. It was like recycled propaganda that was just. They might. I heard people talking the same way that they talked here about the protests, and I just so disappointed because it's what they're fighting for is for autonomy and for the corruption to end, because it never really did. Even though there's been treaties, even though there's been years past, and there's not deep as crazy violence as there used to be in the 80s, but it's still an issue. And I mean, the stuff that they're doing to the land is so disturbing. Like, how do you think it's okay? I mean, look at a new report came out recently that said that the Amazon rainforest is no longer providing as much CO2, and now it's actually making, like, it's reversed. Now it's making carbon and not soaking it up.
I was going to add that, and at what point, is it going to get where it gets like extremely serious, where more people are going to rise up against these governments that really don't care much for them. I think that's for a lot of South American governments as well, if not all of them.
Which is the
Um,
same struggle in North America, and that's why I feel like we would feel more connected, because our struggles are the same. It's just different ways. And I feel like each of us have been so caught up in, like, we have to do this for our land, that we're not realizing that it's a huger problem. And if we all banded together, then, you know, because we have common issues and common strife. And I mean, I have never felt connected here in this country until I started connecting with other natives from here. And that's when I was like, wow, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel like home for the first time. So,
that's great. You're able to feel more at home and whatnot, because for me, I don't know if I told you, like, I lived in Illinois like most of my life from elementary school up to high school. But I got along with my friends and whatnot. But it would have been nice to have, I think that equal representation is important, as I've said before in other videos. So it would be nice to have met other people from like South America, Central America too, native people to connect to. Um, but it is what it is. That's past now for me. But I mean, I'm happy with where I'm at. That being said, though, I wanted to add up onto one other thing. The decolonization process. At what point did like what, yeah, time of your life did you want to start like decolonizing and realizing, seeing your native roots and wanting to reconnect back?
well, I think during COVID for me, I was in a space where I was not in survival mode anymore, because I was forced to be within myself and forced to be home. And so I asked myself, who am I? Like, I hadn't stopped it. I've been in survival mode, and I mean, that's the experience with a lot of other immigrants. It's like it never ends, it never stops. It's never easy. So we don't have a moment to reflect. So and assimilation too. I mean, to keep us safe, my family tried to assimilate as much as possible. Um, to keep us safe, and that sucks that was the case. So when I started asking questions as to who we were, um, part of my father's side had already done um, genealogy, so that was really easy to deal with. But my mother's was so much difficult, and I had to really dig deep. I was able to get a lot of records. I was able to use ancestry, not for the DNA, but for records, and I found so much information. And it's really beautiful to slowly, like, peel back the layers And it's so funny because I was going to be on the podcast. I was listening to all the first things I was listening to when I first started decolonizing, and I was having such a beautiful moment of like, here I am, like a while later, and it still hits me the same. It still makes my whole soul light up. Um, the firsthand accounts. It's crazy because as soon as I started digging, it's like all this information just started providing itself. And I was able to find out that on my mother's side, my grandfather, he was Native and African, and he also had a railroad company, which he worked so hard to get because it was so much harder for him to have access to um, better treatment. So he worked really hard to impress my grandmother. And to impress my grandmother, he built that. And then he was able to provide mutual aid through this railroad company. And he employed people who were minorities in Colombia, which helped out a lot of families. And to this day, I still meet family members, not family as in blood relation, but family as in, we helped each other out for that help my grandmother. People come up to my family and help us out because my grandmother helped them. My grandfather helped them. My grandmother was curandera. She had a book and she used to help a lot. She has a lot of godchildren because she helped out so many people. They were so grateful. So it's a team of two people who just were amazing and badass in Colombia, and that's my grandfather and my grandmother. So that was really cool to find out that my mutual aid tendencies came from that because that was built into my upbringing.
Wow, that's
So,
fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, and there's been more. I mean, I found out that uh, Tituba um, was from South America, and they believe from the area of Colombia. There was a tribe called Titube, and so they named her after where she was from, and they brought her up to Salem. So it's kind of funny how someone from my territory who was, they changed her ethnicity and her race to fit a narrative that was really detrimental to. Um, they said she was an African American, the Daughters of Liberty. Um, they changed her ethnicity, and so I had to dig really deep to find out that she was Colombian or from the occupied Colombia territory. Uh-huh. And so she came to Boston. She was in Salem, and I came all the way too. So it was just like, wow, she could be an ancestor of mine,
Yeah.
and she keeps popping up over and over again, and it's just so strange how things just start coming out. I also found out that Arawak and Diano people were part of the Muisca Confederacy of the territory, and they moved 500 years prior to Columbus reaching the Americas. And it's in prior to that, I found out that the people who are sourced, who came from Moiska came from Olmec, and so now I see that we're all just so much more related than we thought, and it's really kind of beautiful. And also that I'm finding out that the Moiska had relations with the Inca, and
Yeah.
that's really cool because on my birthday is the day that they gave up Moiska and started the legend of El Dorado. Sorry, I can't say it in English because my tongue's not built for this language.
That's okay.
So
No,
yeah, I'm just having so much fun. I've been able to get a few books off of Amazon that are firsthand accounts of the Inca, the Muisca, the religion. It's just been, I can't believe that I can just order it. I could just find it. Or the fact that there's a podcast out there that tells the firsthand accounts of the encounter between the Muisca and the conquistadores. So it's just like, I'm totally smitten. So
yeah.
smitten with all of it.
It's amazing, right? How we can find these books and whatnot. Like, I'm
Absolutely.
trying to, yeah. There's a book about like the Incas' experience with the conquest, with the Battle of Cajamarca, and then Spanish, unfortunate, Spanish takeover of the Incan Empire, um, and just knowing that there's a book out there of like an Inca experience of that. I mean, that's it's amazing. It's sad. It's sad that what happened, but like just knowing that I can understand that from a native's point of view is just it's really beautiful. And there's also I think there's a book also maybe 2 or 3 books in Tenochtitlan with an Aztec's point of view of the Spanish conquest too. So yeah, it's just really great. I'm so glad that we have these books and like more technology out there to help us find out more information. Um, Juan, did you
Absolutely.
want? Yeah, thank you. Juan, did you want to add anything?
I kind of lost because I'm having like poor signal right now. I, I kind of went through 3 different restaurants and they all have poor signal.
Oh,
I think I may have had better signal at home.
it's okay. No worries, Juan.
But can you
Um,
guys hear me well or no?
we can hear
Yeah.
you well. Your video's moving a little bit slow, but we can hear you well. So no
Gotcha.
worries. Anyway, yeah, we were just learning all these great things about Vivium and just talking about how because of like more technology, living in 2021, we are able to have more access to like books of our native predecessors as far as like in the Incan Empire. And I want to make sure I don't butcher. Is it Muisca?
Muisca.
Correct. Muisca. Okay. And,
Yeah,
people.
I was born on land. But my family moved around a lot prior to being in Viterbo, which Viterbo was only started in the early 1900s, and so my family moved around a lot, which is one of the signs of, going to a better place because it has more things that you can use and need. At the same time, because of my father having, my father does have colonizer family. They're Sephardic Jews, so it's a little different. They assimilated so that they could have uh, abilities to like function and live, but there's definitely a lot of heavy indigenous admixture, and so it's like, whew, it's a lot to
Mm-hmm.
trace it all and track it down. I mean, I found out that on my father's side we have Basque lineage, which is like the indigenous people of Spain too. So it's just like,
Yeah, I found out I had Basque too. I did my DNA test.
we're
It was like,
ancestral.
yeah, right. It was like 2% Basque. And I guess there's history between like, what is it? I know the people of Barcelona want independence from Spain, or there's some people that do. I don't know if it's the same with Basque. The people.
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, that's really crazy. So one day if I'll find someone that like, you know, is from there, I can learn more about that. But yeah, it's just super interesting, you know?
Yeah, I looked
Uh,
into some of they believed in dragons.
oh, yeah?
Yeah, and they were
Huh.
isolated, so they were able to have their same language from the time prior to Boss being Boss. There was 3 different tribes: the Celts, uh, it's another one with the A, and then the Basque. And yeah, they were isolated, so their language is not related to any other language. Although I just recently found this out, and this is kind of weird. Mochila, the word mochila, it means the same thing in no, I can never say it, Nahuatl, and also in Basque. So they have the same word mochila for the same thing.
Huh.
Isn't that a little weird?
Yeah,
How come
definitely.
nobody else in the world, no other language connects, but like mochila is a common word in both?
That is very, very, like,
Curious.
interesting. Juan, yeah, Juan, what do you think about that? All right, Juan might be a little bit busy. um, yeah,
I'm here. What were you guys saying?
uh, Vivian, you mind if you repeat
Sure.
one last time? Yeah.
So the word mochila in I'm not saying this correctly, and I feel terrible. No
It's
Walt,
okay.
the language of Mexica, and Basque in Spain and the border of France, they have the same word, mochila, and it means the same thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Cool.
Yeah, it's really nuts. And I'm sure there's more things like that as well around the world. Um, and we could go on and on about that. But Vivian, I think I wanted to bring up one little point before we move into the next part, and that was I had seen a video recently about a lot of Colombians taking down like a conquistador statue,
Yeah.
and I'm cool with that, obviously. But here's the thing: like the mayor was like, "No, you shouldn't do that because we're a diverse city, and you're offending people." So I'm curious what your thoughts were on what that mayor's response was, because mine was just like IDGAF. Did I say that
Right.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because it's I believe. I mean, who are the people that were oppressed for so long and whatnot? And I know very little about what people of Colombia, like those that are non-native, their views are on the culture and indigenous people and the Amazons and whatnot. And we'll get more onto that. But yeah, I was just curious on your thoughts on that mayor's
Well,
response.
Colombia's particular brand of racism is a little different than the U.S. And basically, people in power are not people who care about diversity. You'll see telenovelas all with light complexions. But then for soccer, you have people who are Afro Latino.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of representation. So right now, all I see everywhere is people who don't want to reveal the truth still, that it was really awful, and they want to claim that they are Spaniard or Italian descent when they're not. uh, I've met people who look so indigenous, and they're like, "We're Italian, we're Colombian Italians," and I'm like, "No."
Yeah, I was curious on that when I saw like the population, and I'm not saying that like the European population of Colombia isn't high. I'm sure that because there's more like Europeans in Colombia than there are like Peru or Ecuador. But I was curious because, and again, I brought this up in another video, that in Panama you had people as dark as me identifying as European, as white. I was like, what? Um, and that's because of centuries of colonization and like marginalizing native people and the media and all this other stuff. I could go on and on. So that's why I was curious if it was the same thing also in Colombia, where you have people as dark as me, is essentially saying that I'm Italian or I'm Spanish, like I'm not native. One's laughing.
Yeah, there's a lot of colorism too. I mean, I had to say to my mom, "Hey, you know that our curly hair, my aunt's curly hair, the fact that my brothers are a lot darker skinned and I'm lighter. I was like, Mom, you had children of all different colors. Do you know why that is?" And she was like, "No, I don't." And I was like, "Well, your grandfather was mixed." And she was like, "Now that you say it, yeah." And I'm like, "Wow, this whole time." Like, what is that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, I mean, there's a lot of erasure to the point where here in the US, people were forced to have their children ripped out of their arms and taken to residential schools. In Colombia, they're so colonized that we pay for them to take our kids and go to Catholic school. We pay them.
Yeah,
We just, here you go, and some money.
That's
Like,
true.
it's like you don't got to worry about the government doing genocide against natives. The people of Colombia will do it themselves against like
yep,
it, and it's the same with I think Mexico as well with
yeah.
older generations saying to their kids like, hey, you look like an Indio. Like I don't want you to marry someone that also looks like an Indio. And it's sad. Like how is someone supposed to live when you're told by like your parents or your grandparents that your skin is like ugly? Oh God, it's really terrible. Um,
Yeah.
it's really messed up. But that essentially, in my view, is what Latinidad stands for. And people are free to argue with me against that. But if there was change, it would have been in the past 300 years of its existence.
Yeah.
200 or something, whatever. Um, and I'm not willing to, be a part of Latinidad. But
Yeah,
that's
me
a
either.
little personal story.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I don't want anything to do with Latinidad or Hispanic. Neither of those words. Um, they're recent creations to further divide us and to further erase who we are, and
Hmm.
it's really sad. And the nationalism, it's
It's
so
extreme, right?
disappointing.
Yeah, it's really sad. I have a book somewhere, but it was about the not current, the past civil war in Guatemala, and how the soldiers are literally like trained to be very nationalistic thinking, and believing that these rebels are like disgusting terrorist indios
Yes.
that want the country to go down. But the people that are the soldiers are also natives themselves, essentially. I
Right.
mean, you can use the word mestizo, mestizaje, it doesn't matter. They're essentially, I mean, majority of them are very much the same.
Right.
Um, so it's really disgusting, and it's still going on today in Central and South America, and it's hard to break, you
Yeah,
know,
it is.
because the
It's
media doesn't stop. Hmm?
right. It's really hard because I mean, I've had to use epigenetics to further, explore my nativeness, my indigeneity, and to show to my parents like, how come we have no hair, like none anywhere, and they're like, oh, I don't know, and I was like, well, our ancestors didn't need to have hair because we were in warm climates. That's why we don't have hair, and we would have hair if we had a lot of European uh, descent, because regardless, the hair would be mixed in there, and none of us have a lot. So I was like, so these little tiny things that I have to like keep bringing up has been helping my. I mean, the last time I spoke to my mother, I was saying how we were. I was speaking about us in with native and indigenous like terms, and she didn't even say anything at all. She didn't complain. She didn't protest, and I was like, she's growing. Look at her go.
That's awesome. Wow, that's great. And see, and that's why like I love seeing that because we're showing people like the real, world views of like what's going on and the oppression that people, especially those indigenous people in rural communities, and just the overall appearance of the native person is just how the identity is treated in the media, education systems, and all these other things. And for us to finally like wake up and see that this colonized view, we don't have to think this way anymore.
Yeah,
Um, so it's just really beautiful, and I think more people are catching on too. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, thank you. Uh, and it's funny. I do want to add in one thing: is that I had made a TikTok account recently, and I made this video saying, okay, I love the fact that we're all posting these videos of like reconnecting and whatnot, but we have to realize that not everyone in Colombia is native, because we have like European, like Colombians too, and there's like a Mexican, uh,
There's German
Europeans too.
Colombians too.
Yeah, which I also didn't. I always thought it was like Spanish and Italian. Didn't know there's a lot of Germans as
There's
well.
Romani too. A lot of Romani. There's a lot of Muslims. I mean, there was synagogues already in Colombia before the World Wars, where everybody came over from Europe,
Hmm.
and they were shocked. They were like, "How come they're there?" And it's like, well, Sephardic Jews that were exiled around the time of the conquest were forced out, and a lot of them came to Colombia, and a lot of them assimilated into the
Yeah,
culture, so that
yeah,
they could have some. Because it was really bad. It wasn't just conquistadores; it was other people too escaping what was going on in Europe. So
oh yeah.
yeah,
And I'm sure there's a lot of like Arab people as well that also
of course.
assimilated. I know a lot of them left because if we go back in time in history, we have the Moorish.
Hmm.
Well, the Iberian Peninsula was taken over by the Moors, so there's a lot of Arab people there. And I don't think obviously they all left, so there's a lot of conquistadors that also had Arab blood.
Yes.
And yeah, it's funny, but we're called the mestizos, so which is interesting. Um, But anyway, yeah, I was just curious again, going back on your thoughts on the statue and just everything else that's been going on. We'll have more to talk about a little bit later. But first of all, like the indigenous people of Colombia, and learning about who the Muisca people are, because I did a little bit of research on them. They're really fascinating
Yeah.
people that is never talked about. At least
No.
in the American education system. Oh God, go on. They're definitely not talked
Nope.
about. Sorry,
No,
one.
and they were as big as the Inca. Okay, so there's two huge researchers who I have been lucky enough to find their YouTube videos on their seminars. So I was able to and because I know Spanish, I was able to listen to the, and I for like a whole week I just listened over and over because every time there was more information that I would retain, and it was like, so both of those researchers were they were saying that we need to, for because Moisca is a reclaimed, just like how everybody has the people. Well, Moisca means the people. It's another one of the terms that's um like it talks about a bigger group of people, but individually they were all different tribes. And both of them say that we need to push further once we realize, okay, we're Moisca, because Moisca makes us like a community, because there was a Moisca confederacy. There was two different capitals. It was Bogota, but not Bogota. It was Bacata. I like Bacata better.
Like
um,
Bogota.
but yeah, it was two different areas, and I think because of the conquest, thinking that we had gold and not having it, they really kind of erased us as being one of the big civilizations. I mean, through epigenetics, I learned that short people become that way when there's a big civilization, and Colombian people are not very tall. And so that means that there were a group of people that all ate similar foods, and like population control. Everybody ate equally. So that's why we're all not very tall. So that means we were a huge civilization, but we just kind of got erased. And the video I sent to you, so you could see that there was so much more happening in Colombia, but we were erased because we were reduced down to a gimmick of El Dorado. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
sad because there's so much beauty. I mean, I'm learning now. There was moon and sun, and there was two factions for the religion. Some people believed in the moon, some people believed in the sun. There's a lot of different stories surrounded too that are very, very whitewashed because of them manipulating our history when the war was won, when the revolution happened.
Sure.
They wanted to edit it to fit the mestizo narrative. So they were like, oh, a white man came by and fixed everything. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
I would
Wow.
blame Simon Bolivar.
Simon Bolivar, yep, I agree.
Yeah. I need to do more
Yeah.
research on that. Juan, do you want to add on a little bit more of why Simon?
What were you guys talking about? Because I keep dropping.
It's okay. I asked if you did you want to add on a little about what you meant about Simon Bolivar? Just about him kind of like erasing native identities. We were just talking about like how Simon Bolivar uh, was a reason for like indigenous erasure, and in my opinion, I don't even know that much about him, but I believe he brought more like nationalism. When these
Absolutely.
countries started,
Yeah.
yeah, and we should all like unify under Colombian or Bolivian or Peruvian. Um, so while it is good that he was able to defeat the Spaniards in war, but on the other side, he also he led to more erasure of native people, bringing them under again like under Colombian or
Yeah, he pulled a psych.
Ecuadorian. Sorry, people of
He pulled
psych.
a psych, like, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and here's the thing: is that the government officials of these new countries were all like, unfortunately, Spanish descendants, full on, and there isn't really much room for Native people to have their own political positions of power. So essentially, it was similar. Same show, just different rulers with you know last names, first names, not even so much different. I mean, different backgrounds, as in like they didn't originate from Spain; they originate from here, but they're still like Spaniards.
Right. No, and we have to thank the Haitian
Right.
people for that revolution to begin with. I mean, they went to Haiti because they had just become free, and they were like, "Hey, can we borrow money?" And they're like, "Sure, we got crash crops. We have tons of money." And now they don't have a lot of money, but they helped fund that because they were about no more slavery anywhere, and they didn't do what they said they would with what the funding was for. It's really sad, really
Yeah,
disturbing, but yeah, grateful for the Haitian people that helped us get to now where we can have these talks, because I'm sure if it would look a lot different if they didn't have the revolution, which sucks. It's a catch-22. Like, you're grateful that it happened, but not grateful for what they did, because the casta system wasn't really like why, yeah, we
sure.
didn't need that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like it was. At first, I'm like, wait, why didn't we do what the Haitians did and like overthrow, the oppressive like Spanish overlords, as someone might call
But they
them.
wanted us to think that they were part of us because they were mixed, and then it's like, no, you're spoiled little brats that are like, wow, our parents are making money off of us, so why don't we take over and like become what they are, and instead of like what they said they would. So,
Sure. No, exactly. Like I know that a lot of
Um,
Spaniards.
to add, I don't want to cut you off, but I know that the Choco Africans in Colombia, they became their own kind of thing, and they're free. Uh,
absolutely.
there's a lot of historians in Colombia that wanting to talk more on basis, talk more in that context because nobody really knows about it too much.
Absolutely. The other thing that people don't understand too is that more Africans were taken to South America than the North,
Oh yeah,
and these communities are kind of super beautiful to watch flourish because they were able to retain their, because the land in South America is so much more closer to Africa than it is in the North, so they were able to retain their cultures. And when you go to places like El Choco, I mean, I was telling you earlier how Colombia has a different type of racism. You don't see people being overtly like having lateral violence in the streets, or um, like you won't see people acting like that because the people that are African are not in these spaces. They have segregated them, and so yeah, you don't see that happening on the streets. You don't see it like in your face. You won't get called anything, but they'll expect you not to be in their spaces. And if you are, you're a disturbance. So places like Choco have been able to flourish. I mean, right now, they're vacation spots. There's places where have villages and have retained have conserved like Gullah Gullah Island, where there's a mix of all of it together, and they started their own way of living that's closer to what they knew prior to being taken and forced into slavery. So I think it's beautiful, and a lot of people in the U.S. don't know about Gullah Gullah Island either, and that's kind of sad. The Geechee culture is beautiful, and I feel like that's the closest thing to what Choco and different communities in South America are, because it's not like up here. It's 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 a lot more connected to the roots. I mean, merengue, cumbia, all of these things are the roots are African roots. So we have a lot to thank to the African culture because a lot of it has flowed into Colombian culture, and it has made it what it is. And like, it's the food. I love it. I love that I get to see so many different cultures just in my day to day based on just being from Colombia.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about that. A little bit earlier, you had brought up that like there's a lot of soccer players on the national Colombian team that are in black, African, Afro Latino, maybe as you would call them. And would you say that maybe there's a lot of like mere, I don't know if it's called mere racism, where most of Colombia is like, yeah, we love you, you're playing for us, but then when they're outside in street clothes, and I don't mean like street clothes, like normal clothes, and it's like, oh, I don't want to be associated with, African, you know, black Colombians. Do you think that is that an issue in Colombia? Is there like an um, like how would I say, African stereotype? Because I know in the U.S. we have issues with racism as well, but
So
I
it's a
don't know.
little different. There's colorism,
Yeah.
and people practice that without a single thought in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel as though, I mean, I can't speak for I can't speak for people, but I
Sure.
have watched a lot of videos where people discuss how they love going to South America, not just places like Colombia, because in the US, being black and walking down the street is an issue. And in Colombia, because we are mixed, for so long, um, you have families like mine where we have Afro Latinos within our family, and apparently my family didn't see the different colors, which I think is bullshit. But yeah, because of that, I think that there isn't like on the street violence, or like I said, lateral violence. They're not gonna say, hey this, hey that. Um, they just, it's different. Like I said,
Yeah.
they just don't expect you to be in these spaces. They don't kick you out. They don't push you out. And the other thing is, a lot of people who have African descent in Colombia also don't even acknowledge it themselves. And you can clearly see the roots and the features, and it's like, why are we kidding ourselves? Like, stop.
Sure.
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that is wanting to be far away from it, but that's a tradition from the caste system. The not wanting to be identified as that because you'd have less opportunities. So I mean, it's internalized for the most part. But I mean, you won't get attacked. People that come from the U.S. who visit always say that it's just so much more calm and relaxed because they don't get, the police don't stop them because of just being black. They don't get, racial slurs get yelled at them on the street for no reason. There's not,
Sure.
it's not that. It's just you won't find a lot of um, African Americans in or Afro Latinos in the cities.
Okay. I
There's
get
not
it.
a lot of like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that because it's different. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's all right. I do appreciate you for doing your best to answer that. I think I could probably put these other two parts kind of hand in hand, and that's talking about like the indigenous like relations with Colombia. And one of my friends and guy that's been on this channel, Nuamato, had shown me this video where the Colombian media like said that like what was it, the title or the name of this video, it was made by some reporter saying indigenous uh, something goes against Colombian people, and they made it sound like the indigenous people were like straight up foreign, like outsiders. They didn't even call them, like, they're obviously Colombian too. And
Right.
I was like, damn, is the Colombian media really that bad?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, they La Minga, so the big protest that has been going on that has not stopped. It's indigenous people saying, "Hey, we matter. You are not helping us out during COVID. You're not caring about our rights. You're messing up our lands. You're messing up our waters. You're taking forests and destroying them." And so they're resisting. The problem is that, I mean, you can see the generational trauma up here in the north, where residential schools cause a lot of alcoholism and a lot of um, sexual assault within families. There's a lot of drugs. It's because of the trauma from residential schools, and prior to that, more trauma. It's just levels and levels of trauma. And so here, people don't believe that there will be hope. So the children are carrying that in them and seeing that. And what they're doing is thinking that the only way out is violence. And their parents aren't about that. So they're not like, don't be violent, don't be violent. And they're angry. They're angry because they're watching everything be destroyed in their lives. So a lot of younger indigenous people in Colombia joined the FARC. And that really helped the propaganda become worse and say, oh, the FARC and natives are together and they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. And it's like, what else would you do if your whole family, all your lineage has been raped, stolen, you know, all of the terrible things that have happened? You see no hope. And I mean, the FARC were taking advantage of these kids and people and telling them that they would help them, that they would resist, that they would be partners. And so now when there is any kind of talk about indigenous people, they see them as another. They see them as like the the force that we have to fight against. And sometimes Colombian people don't even know why they feel that way towards natives. And it's really kind of sad that that's how it's being painted. When, I mean, I can totally understand the children who are saying, no, we need to fight and we need violence and we need guns. We need to meet them at their level, because it is disheartening. I mean, for me here in the States, watching the children at the border and knowing that when my parents crossed, if they had been stopped, I would be those children. And it's like, that breaks my heart and makes me almost like feel the same way they did. We have to fight with violence, but that's not how our ancestors were. That's not what I feel we should be doing. I don't think violence is the way, but I do think we need to stand up and resist. I don't think, guns blazing is the way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. That there has to be some form of diplomacy. Um, but I wanted to add on. Did you explain maybe the FARC one more time, if you don't mind, for our guests? That it's just like a revolutionary.
Yes, so
Yeah.
they are tired of the corruption. They're tired of nothing working out for the people. And so they're called a terrorist group in Colombia. And they've created a lot of deaths. They've created a lot of awful things. But, I mean, Colombia is corrupt. The government doesn't care about us. I mean, all they're saying is all correct. So I feel as though when there are such levels of awful things happening with systems of power, there always will be someone to resist that. And I'm not saying that it's okay. They're a terrorist group. They have committed acts of atrociousness.
Sure.
But, I mean, would you want that? Would you want to just completely fight, and I mean, they just raised taxes on food. Well, now people can barely eat, and they don't care. They don't care. It's almost like how in the U.S., when the rent moratorium ended, everybody in the Congress was on vacation. It's like a blatant, like, we don't fucking care about these art.
Sure. No, I get that. That's my old saying is. Did you say it's hard? I'm sorry.
It's hard to explain the FARC to people because they only see the Americanized version, which is FARC are terrorists. They're bad, but it's like, why do they even have them? Ask yourself that, and then go from there. So you're fully educated on what it is that they're saying and what it is they're fighting for, because they're just asking for things not to be so terrible for the people. I mean, doing getting there through violence is not the answer, like I said earlier, but I feel as though if you're going to be that corrupt, there's going to be people fighting it. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad or good. I just think it is.
My old saying is that you can only push a dog so far into the corner until it's like time to bite back. Um, so I can see. I mean, obviously, it's understandable. Like, taxes are being, brought up more. Like issues with food and other problems as well, scarcity. So it's a sad situation, and not just Colombia, but other countries like Venezuela and even in Peru. Like there's a lot of protests there as well. Um, so it just makes me wonder, like what will be the final solution. But I did want to add into a couple more things. Juan, did you have anything you wanted to add? It's good to see you finally sitting down. but
Yeah, the signal's kind of getting better, but it just dipped so much.
Sure, no worries. I'm glad the hope the signal improves
Yeah,
more for you.
I'm coming back in and out. But yeah, it's just the signal's really bad here in New Mexico.
It's okay. No worries, Juan. Um, so then, Vivian, I want to just ask a couple other things before we move on to the video that we watched, and that was the perception of those that are indigenous people of in Colombia, and I'm talking about non-native perception, um, because I think from what I understand, since I started this channel to now, a lot of people in South America, when they think of indigenous people, they think of like communities in the Amazon, those in the mountains, and I would not see myself as like a native person, even though maybe I appear to be native. I am a Colombian, or I am a Peruvian, I am a Latino. Don't call me native. Like,
Yeah,
so some get defensive. So I was
absolutely.
curious on, is it similar in Colombia, or from what maybe
Yeah,
your experience?
so
Yeah,
to be honest with you, it's the same type of mentality. When you ask a Colombian what they think about a person who's indigenous, they'll say, "Oh, they're drunks, they're drug addicts, they are beggars, they are lazy," and it's
I
just
heard
like,
that.
what the hell? Like that's not the case. That's not how it is. It's it's. I mean, there are those situations happening, but it's because of being a symptom of colonialism, and you have to add context to those things. You can't just say, oh, that's who they are, what they are. No, that is an issue that happens in all colonized um, civilizations. um, that's why I keep saying we need to unite, because it's the same issues, the same, all of it. And yes, I mean, I feel as though there's a lot of people who can't let go because they have seen so much horror when people have identified as indigenous. And so they will, cook indigenous foods, they will look indigenous, they will wear, and they will deny and deny and deny. And it's like, it's so sad. But it's getting better. And I see a lot of the youth. Like, I have a little cousin that I speak to regularly, and I said to him, I was like, we're indigenous. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know. We talk about it a lot. And I was like, oh, I don't have to tell you. Like, you're like the generation here, the younger generation that is aware of these things, and they're not denying it. And, you know, they're trying to make it so it's not as terrible. And it's not just happening in the States, it's not just happening in other parts of the world. It's happening within colonized areas, and I love watching TikTok because everything's coming out. People are sharing all kinds of information. There's a young lady that I follow on TikTok who, when I was little, all the folk tales that I heard from my mom and my cousins, she was sharing them, and it made me so happy. I was like, Dongolele, like all of that, like El Caiman, the pink dolphin man, like all these things, those duendes, like, makes me think.
Yeah, that's great. And I've never heard of the pink dolphin man. You said?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
actually, there's a lot of women in Colombia that blame or say that they're the person who's the dad is the pink dolphin, and on their birth certificate they'll put that the dad is a pink dolphin.
Oh, really? Wow. That's interesting.
We have pink dolphins in Colombia.
Yeah, yeah, there are pink. I was really surprised about that. I was like, oh, wow, there's dolphins near Colombia. Like, it's really interesting how, and there's islands too. I forget about
Yeah.
that as well.
We have
So-
almost every single type of it's one of the most diverse places. We have deserts, mountains, we have snow. Like there's every type of climate in Colombia.
yeah, it's a beautiful place, you know. I hope to get back there again. And to those watching and everyone, it's not an expensive ticket to go there. Surprisingly, I found like a ticket to go there was like $200 or like $200 to $300 both ways. So
Wow.
anyway, a little random fact. um, but yeah, that was just my thoughts. I was just curious about that because with wanting to believe that you are indigenous or like wanting to connect to your native roots. I know, and I've talked to others on our videos that, like, at least in Mexico and other countries, you're taught that you're not native because you don't live the culture. You are this different race of human being, um, and it's not indigenous. It's not native. You're something else. You're a Latino, and that is how you shall be. And that's the end of the story, pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I thought.
Well, I mean, there is okay. So here in the U.S., there's this the Appalachian people. There's the Melungeons, which are like three different races put together. Actually, Abraham Lincoln's mother was a Melungeon, so he was a mixed race person. And yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, I don't want to take the word religion, but tri-racial people in
Sure.
Colombia. Um, I don't like to even note on that because our ancestors didn't actually like use blood quantum or percentages to like describe or invite people to be part of the tribe. It was so much more.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way, so I don't even like to do that. But I mean, in the modern senses, there's a lot of people who are tri-racial. I'm one of them. I have a lot of admixtures in my ancestry, and I look very different than people would think. I mean, even within my own Colombian culture here, within my friends, they were like, "What? What are you? Why do you talk like that? Like, why do you have those traditions?" And I'm like, I didn't know I was different than you. And now that I'm a lot older, and I mean, we're from Viterbo, which is one of the last places that was conquered or explored, and I live in the mountains, so I would be like country folk. My dialect is Paisa, and so we're not like people in Bogota. We talk different. We sing when we talk. Like the foods that we eat, all of it, the traditions, they're all really different than my own friends who are Colombian. So they didn't even understand me or why I was the way that I was, or why did I have a brother who was so dark, and why was I so light.
Yeah.
So it's just
Wow.
weird.
Yeah, it's funny how things work sometimes. No, thank you for sharing that part. I think Colombia is a fascinating country. Just there's so many different landscapes and people, just languages as well. Um, Again, I will have to get out there. I think Juan decided to take a break, so we'll bring him back in a little bit later. Um, and what I really wanted to get onto now was the video. And for those of you that maybe aren't sure of that video, I'll share that in the link in the description. There's a link in the description. And first off, yeah, the main person, I forgot her name. She was very interesting. She's very British. And it's funny because I looked up her biography and she's actually Middle Eastern.
Yes,
But
that's why
someone that,
that's why it pains me so much more. It's like, why?
yeah, it's she, how to describe her personality. I don't I don't want to get too much into it, but just like the type of person that like really like maybe genuinely does care, but when you maybe ask like something else, it's just like like kind of get annoyed or something. But that's just my opinion. Maybe you felt the same sentiment as well about this
Yeah, I mean,
person.
I tried to reach out to her after I watched it to ask her some questions about, why did they take it to the UK and not share it in Colombia? How come they didn't share it worldwide? If you know that, there's erasure and you care so much, like you say in the video, and
Mm,
it's so touching to you, how can you just take it and move the information and turn it into a gimmick like you're doing? Like, how dare you?
yeah.
I would never do that to another culture. Why would you do it? How do you like feel okay with that? Why aren't you doing anything to repair that? But
You know,
she didn't have to.
I think she follows the money, like a lot of people out there, and doesn't want to answer too many questions. You know, don't ask, don't tell. Um, and that's how she is, and that's how a lot of people are when they get consumed by greed. That it's okay, I'll do what I need to do, and then I'm out. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go hug my money, essentially. Um, and I just wanted to remind the followers, it's called Jungle Mystery: Lost Kingdoms of the Amazon. Um, and again, the link will be in the description. And essentially, the video goes about this explorer, and she goes through, South America, exploring these, ancient settlements, and she tries to prove that, like, these settlements are actually quite big, and like they are covered up. She talks about the government, again, like erasure. She discusses the mining issues in the rivers and the mercury
Magnesium.
that miners, magnesium, I think it was
No, mercury.
mercury.
I think it's mercury. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, mercury that miners leave in the lake when they're looking for gold, the rivers, and it's terrible for the indigenous people. You had the issues with the Brazilian natives, indigenous communities that were at the hands, like literally at the mercy of, in my opinion, like a lot of colonial government officials. Um, and I won't say all because maybe there are some that support them, but like how they just they don't get their land, and they are at the mercy of these officials. And unfortunately, in a lot of history, they've lost their land because the government essentially has the power, they have the money and the military, the means of taking it if they desire to. That's really terrible. Um,
Yeah, resguardias is what they call it, but it's a reservation, and they just shrink them down, and they can't do anything about it. They don't have anybody who will represent them. People like will get will disappear that represent them. It's just not safe, and nobody's helping them out. I mean, in the show
mhm.
Rise, where a northern native went around and she did go to the Amazon. She did talk about the problems, but there needs to be more of that, so that because we're fighting the same fight. We need support down here, down in South America. They're getting little coverage, little care.
Oh yeah. And the deforestation, like literally, one of my friends showed me on Instagram of some video in Paraguay, and these Paraguayan miners and officials essentially are like the little foot soldiers, I guess, of the Brazilian government and Argentinian government. But essentially, they just like mow over these indigenous communities and take over this land. Um, and what do they do with the land? That they use a lot of the wood, for logging and whatnot, and then they destroy more forests to make way for the cattle. That's a shitty. The cattle get the shitty end of the stick because they all end up dying too. For more, obviously, more meat to feed the country's population, essentially, but that's not how it should go. Again, but where do we find the solution to this? Unfortunately, I think it's going to go back to, you know, putting a dog too far into the corner and the dog will bite back. But it's hard in Brazil because probably a lot of the population, 200 million people that live there, probably support the government. You have the farmers, you have the ranchers, you have people that support farmers and ranchers, you have the military, and this is just my guess, and I don't want to sound biased, but I would assume that probably a lot of people in the military in South and Central America probably do not have a very high, a positive perspective on indigenous people. I mean, we see it in history. I mean, I'll back up what I have to say, but you see the problems that go on. Government like hires the military to go in and go clear land, do what they need to do as long as they're extracting the resources and getting the job done. And if indigenous lives are lost, then so be it. And that is what I think. People are free to
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, they don't care, exactly. Like, because, for example, and I've said this before, like in Peru, if we realize that most of us are, in fact, native people, we probably would stop supporting these idiots. But again, like, there is money that talks as well. Um, but it's just a really sad situation because we're brainwashed to believe that we're better than those in rural communities. I don't mean we, but like those in South America. We're fed
yeah,
this propaganda that indigenous people are essentially at the same level as dogs, I think. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So it's sad. It's a
Unfortunate.
sad situation. And that's why I created this channel. It was the reason why. Was because I want us to like rise up and see what we can do with enough power. We can try to like attempt to make a difference in this world. Because right now, I mean, you're not seeing it. I mean, you are seeing, some examples. For example, in Colombia, like this, the toppling of that statue. Those wanting to fight for more indigenous rights, but there's so much more we can do. And if we don't support like these colonial governments, we stop for a second and realize, we're not
Yep.
so much different than those in communities, in indigenous
And the
communities.
treaties don't help. I mean, they had a treaty with the FARC. That didn't help. That didn't change anything. That didn't make anything better.
Yeah,
Not
exactly. The treat.
what are treaties going to do when we have a corrupt government who will say one thing and do another?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I never trust any treaties that are proposed by government officials, much less those in South America.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
crazy that they are not seeing these treaties as being, modern day colonies like Hawaii, Guam,
mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
Caribbean,
yeah,
Puerto
exactly. Like,
Rico, Alaska. Alaska's
yeah, even Alaska. I mean, you go on and on about those places too as well. Especially Guam. That's an interesting because I don't know when it became a U.S. territory. It was a part of Spain, and then it got freedom, maybe for a brief few seconds, and then the Americans came over and we took over that island, and then it was used during World War II. Um, so
in
it
Hawaii,
was used to battle the Japanese. Sorry,
in Hawaii too.
and Hawaii too. Yeah, exactly. And I would love to have a Hawaiian come on and discuss like more as far as like because I don't know how much of the history you know, Vivi. I'm sure you know a lot more than me. But as far as like how Hawaii was acquired by the United States, was through like methods of colonization, like these European missionaries, well, white American missionaries, were raised in Hawaii, and then I think that what they wanted to have Hawaii be taken over for United States use, and then what was it? Didn't they? What was they
They
invaded the king?
overthrew the Queen.
Yeah, they overthrew the queen. Yeah, they overthrew the queen, and then I think what was an ultimatum, and then the Hawaii, the people submitted, and now Hawaii's a state of the United States. So
Yeah,
again, a sad situation because um, what can you do about that? Because I
yeah.
think that there's a
Well,
lot of
I
people.
mean, podcasts like this, where we get to share our knowledge. I mean, the show we were talking about, there was a huge discovery that they kept quiet for a whole year during COVID, and there's 8 miles of ice age art in Colombia that pushes things back so much further as to and offers so much more opportunities for research too, because if we were there then scientists have some explaining to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I want to retract my statement real quick. I mean, like, what more can we do? Because my knowledge of Hawaiian history is not much, so I'm just trying to like think of more ideas. Because right now I've been focused on like indigenous studies and indigenous history and whatnot. But yeah, what you said is there's so much more to unravel. Again, that's not covered in the education system. And many Americans, I believe, are fed this view of like, look, indigenous people live in these rural communities. They were taken over by us, and that's the end of the story. And the
Or
same you could say
how they
about.
believe that Taino people don't exist anymore, and it's like, yes, they do. They're alive. They're still there. They're
Oh yeah,
fighting
we'll get
for
on.
the same things.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll get on to that too in a little bit here, because I've encountered these Spanistas and others that say like, no, there's no Tainos. Yes, like perhaps like full-blooded Tainos would be a little bit difficult to find. Yes, but you'd be doing them a very huge. What would I say? Just disfavor, disfavor, but just a problem for them by saying that there's no natives in Puerto Rico or Haiti. Disservice. I
Right.
apologize. Yeah, disservice to them.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that someone that's like 70% Taino or 50 or something. And again, I don't like to use blood quantum, but some Taino like blood that's clearly it shows that they look somewhat native, and to say that they're not native at all is silly. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit because I have a lot to say about that. And we don't have too much time because I usually like to keep this under 2 hours. Feel like we could talk much more. Um, but yeah, I'll talk about my encounters with my little friends. I'll call them in just a little bit. But yeah, the video was really interesting. What really irked me was the fact that was in Brazil, how government officials go in and took the blood of these people from these indigenous communities and they didn't explain what they were going to do with it. Like that's pretty messed up. It's very messed up.
Yeah. On top of that, there is what I'm because of the fact that I'm in a whole other country. There's communities of people who have stories of Germans being in the Amazon experimenting. And it's funny how all of the plants from South America are what the Germans are using for medicine with like Bayer or with, I don't know, there's so many German places, but they were in our jungles playing doctor and stealing blood, stealing our medicines, stealing our recipes, and leaving and
Actually,
doing whatever they want and making a lot of money from it. And so now we're all starting to realize that it's a thing that happened in every territory. It was sounds like it's a system of these people coming and doing these things, which really bothers me a lot to the core because there was rumors that people fled Germany and went to South America, and now we have indigenous tribes that have these stories. So when are we going to say that these things actually happened? Because how else would they have gotten the ingredients from the Amazon? How else? But they just like, I don't know. I don't know how they explain that.
Yeah. Juan, were you
I
gonna add
actually have
something?
some books. Yeah, I actually have some books now that my internet's kind of like going back to normal. Plants with a God Rain. It's a really good book about the Amazons, and if you're into anthropology, that's a good one. And then if you want to like know about the plants, this one's really good too. I think Vivian's heard this one though. Plants of the God.
Wow.
Those are good.
I'll have that saved in here. Thanks for sharing that
And they
one.
talk about like the really good books.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
Juan put me on to a show that had a German doctor also in the show, which made me so happy because it's like, okay, now we have actual like media coverage that talks about this, and so it's not just the tribes, it's not just rumors. Now also TV is showing that, and I'm grateful that it's out there.
Which one?
Yeah, Green Frontier. So good.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Really good.
You said Green Frontier?
Yeah, I'm glad
I'll have that
you
down.
put me onto that. It's on Netflix.
I'll put that in the link description. Yeah, I would love to see that too. Yeah, there's just so much, and the fact that they're German doctors and like they're in South America and like their parents or grandparents fled here to come here to stay, and now that they're doing these things to indigenous people, or they're just really terrible. And I wanted to add on to that is that we all know about like the colonization of Africa and how a lot of European countries like took certain parts. The Germans are actually extremely. I think they went on a genocide of this African tribe. I forgot what they were called, like the Haro, and I believe it was in the country of Namibia, where they. Oh gosh, I just went on this. How would I say? They just tried to exterminate this tribe because I think the Germans, while they were trying to take some land of this tribe, and the tribes didn't like that. So then the Germans used their, weapons, which they used against Jews in World War II, on this African tribe, and pretty much wiped most of them out. It's just, it's quite bad. And where does it get to a point, like, where if I'm a native person, do I even want to trust a German or a German citizen, much less a German doctor? And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just how it is. Like, if I'm someone in an indigenous community, and I know the history of German doctors, am I justified to say that I don't trust German doctors in my land? Um, would Germans agree?
You should be allowed to, obviously, I think, because it's everybody has their own experience and everybody has their own trials and
Yeah.
tribulations and things they have to face and come to terms with, and you have a right, if you've had to suffer, if you are a victim, you have a right to be wary and cautious.
Yeah. No, thank you. If anyone that's watching that's German, please come on and talk about it sometime. Because all people's history in South America isn't a great record in communities. So yeah,
I
it's
mean, even up
just really.
here with Project Paperclip and all of the Germans hired by the U.S., and people are like, no, those were the good Germans. No.
Could you maybe talk a little bit about Project Paperclip? Because unfortunately, my knowledge of that isn't good. I'm sorry.
Every time I bring this up on Facebook, people go crazy about it. Okay, so the
Bonkers.
Midwest has a lot of German populations. So Project Paperclip is after the World War, people were trying to get out, and so the U.S. went over there and offered a place to live, citizenship, jobs to high-ranking scientists, high-ranking all types of people that they saw could benefit the U.S. and
Sure.
they weren't completely they didn't really check or care if some of these people were involved in acts of heinous genocide.
Sure.
And so, yeah, they infiltrated the U.S. government because they had homes, they had opportunities. And so in the Midwest, when you go to fill out an application, they have the German, they would Spanish because it's so many Germans. And yeah, everybody likes to say that we only brought over the good Germans, but what in that time, if they were involved, how are they good Germans?
Oh yeah. No, I agree. Like, I definitely know like what the Nazis and the scientists that came over to the United States that our government brought here to help us with, essentially military weapons and other things, and they faced no persecution.
And going to the moon.
Yeah, that too. It's just like it's crazy. But if you're the United States, you want to be on top, and you're going to make those decisions, I suppose. The U.S.
Keep lying
government
still.
is. Yeah, the U.S. government is. I don't trust them. You're right. They've definitely done their cheating lie. And people, I don't want to get too much into it. There's people that like the U.S. government and people that don't, and I don't trust them. I don't care how they appear, if they're black, white, yellow, or green. I'm just, I have my thoughts, and we'll stop there. But anyway, going back, I wanted to bring up just maybe one or two more things about the video, and that was and Juan, were you able to watch maybe a little bit of it, or I wasn't sure if you had any thoughts before I wrapped things up and I brought out my other 2 points.
No, I just watched like half of it where she just starts talking to the tribes and whatnot. I didn't really get too much in the movie.
Sure. No, that's all right. I just wanted to bring up, it's really interesting that the miners themselves, I thought that for some reason that the miners and the loggers would be like European Criollos, but they weren't. Like the ones in the documentary, they're native appearing people too. Like I saw them run off into the forest after they dumped that mercury into the river. I mean, it's crazy that again they're just taught that they're just indigenous communities. I'll do what I want. I don't see myself as them. Um, so it's a sad situation. I was almost about to get to Puerto Maldonado where that took place. So I would have loved to have learned more about that. But it's an issue, and I hope that government officials can take more accountability for putting a stop to it. But it's hard
Yeah.
because the Amazon rainforest is just so massive and big. Um, in my opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, I think the Amazon rainforest should just be left in the hands of indigenous people and not of government officials of any country, of any nation, because it's clear that they don't care. Most of them don't care. And the forest is just going to keep on getting eaten away until there's no more. That is my
Right.
solution. Um,
Yeah,
because,
indigenous stewardship to the land everywhere, all
yeah,
over,
yeah, exactly.
on the whole planet.
Yeah, you just can't trust them.
From the Sami people up in Siberia and Russia and some parts of the U.S., like all the way down. Indigenous stewardship should be a given.
Hmm.
But
I agree. I think that at one time maybe I wasn't so hopeful, but I think that with technology, people waking up, putting people TikTok videos, YouTube channels, and just more like progress towards indigenous communities, bringing people together. I think that there's hope. There is hope for change. It's
absolutely.
taking time, but we're getting there. Um, now, that being said, I think did you want to bring anything else up from the video, Vivian, or were you good?
Yeah, so the interesting part about, I mean, they had LiDAR, so they could see the ground cover, and there was huge civilization. That was awesome to find out. The fact
Yeah,
that there was 8 miles of caveman art that had sloths that
giant
were
sloths.
massive. Yep.
Yeah,
Mammoths and horses, which haven't been in the Americas in a long time. So, I mean, those images are Ice Age images. What does that say about what we're talking about and saying that we come from much longer and from
mm-hmm.
way before? And the last part that I wanted to bring up was when they did take DNA tests in the last portion of it, when
Yeah,
they found out that there is like Melanesian descent, there's markers for people from another side of the world, and then they correlated those with the stories and found out that yes, that's where that tribe came from. There's admixtures because we were trading. We were
yeah,
trading, and there's even stories in Africa of a sailor coming to the Americas, and way before Columbus, and going back, and him leaving people and him taking people. And so now we're the only thing I like about DNA tests is that you're now being able to trace stuff even further through migration. I don't like this whole blood
sure.
quantum, but I do like that we're being able to pinpoint. I mean, O blood, I have O negative blood. I I was able to track through that the Bosque. I was able to do so much with that and find out who I was, and that's wild that Melanesian people, and I actually know a few adoptees as well who have done ancestry and they have Melanesian blood from
It's
Colombia,
Really?
crazy.
and that is
Yeah.
mind-blowing. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, it is really
Proof
beautiful.
that
It's amazing that,
we're more unique.
yeah. And I think I wanted to add one point is on YouTube, there's a lot of not so great people that like leave comments and whatnot. And I think the main like little insult that, anti-indigenous, anti-native people like to throw at is that you're all Asians, blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, oh, so we're really gonna go with this again? And then you like, and us finding that video where we've been here for 10,000 years. I'm like, you're still gonna say that we're all Asians? It's just it's quite silly. But yeah, it was really
Yeah.
interesting to find that there were like freaking giant sloths. Like people had encounters with those and massive animals. It's amazing. Um, and then you going out about like finding genealogy genes in the Basque region, just really cool. So I agree with you too. Like DNA tests do serve a purpose, and my thoughts on blood quantum. I don't like to use it either. Um, but finding out that you have these ancestors from other places is pretty cool, and what makes who you are today. Um, it's funny. Like I was always like, a lot of my friends and people I've met, especially like this past decade, thought that I had like Asian or like Chinese like blood or some of it. When I got my DNA test, I had zero Asian blood at all. So it was kind of funny how that worked out. It was mostly like, what was it? Yeah, people 70% almost like native, and then like 20%, 23% Spanish, and then like Middle Eastern and Jewish, like very small parts. But yeah, it's crazy how it works. Um,
So you had Colombian ancestry too?
no, unfortunately, it was Peru and then ancestry from the Yucatan Peninsula and Bolivia, which
Wow.
is interesting. But no Colombian ancestry. Sorry about that one. But
I heard Colombian.
yeah, no Colombian. But yeah, in Bolivia I was surprised. Well, not too surprised, but the Yucatan Peninsula I was very surprised. Over in Mexico. But yeah, anyway, I wanted to bring up to these final two parts, and I think I can put these two parts together. And that is the criticism from others when we want to believe that we are Native people. And oh my gosh, I could go on and on about this.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, like gatekeepers, Hispanistas, people that support and LARP for Spain, um, and all this other stuff. Like, and then reconnecting to our indigenous side. Again, putting them both together. So I want to bring up one point, and I saw one of your videos where I don't know if you have TikTok anymore, but where it said like if you could stop like one myth, and that is like the indigenous people dying out. And that's, again, I agree with you. That's a very silly myth because we're not dying out. A lot of historians like to say, like, again, and I say this multiple videos, that we're not some like small minority
No.
in like these South and Central American countries. They're actually quite big, but we're fed a lot of propaganda, and a lot of, I will say, you could say fake news, and just these myths that were something else, but that's not true. Um, so I was curious if maybe you'd like to add one little point to that, Vivian, that
Yes.
we're not a myth.
No, not at all. And I reconnected also because I met an Anishinaabe woman who recognized my indigeneity before I'd even recognized it. And she says, "You're Native." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And she's like, "No, you're Native. I know you are." And I was like, she's like, "Go ahead, start your red road." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then when I looked back, yep, she had, like, how does she know? But there's a lot of people who don't believe that reconnecting natives are okay. But I mean, I reach out to my tribe and I talk to them, and I can't wait till I can travel right now because
Yeah.
I was born on the right border. I'm not seen as a legal human being, so I have to wait for a little bit longer before I can travel, but I cannot wait. It's been beautiful seeing my body on other people, because even my own body doesn't fit in with the people that I know who are Colombian. And so um, I don't really care what anybody says, because all of this stuff that's been happening that I've been explaining to you, why would it all happen to me if it wasn't, these things already in my childhood that were there? I mean,
Sure.
the songs that I was raised on are talking about strife. They're talking about um, suffering. And I've heard other songs in Colombia, other hymns, and they talk about having money and all this stuff. And I'm like, there's two types of people that have grown up in Colombia: the ones with means and the ones without means. And what do the ones without means mean? you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't really care what people say, because it's not them who dictate my life or who I am. And so, you know, people will always criticize everything. I mean, people tell me I'm white all the time, and I'm like, I'm light skinned, but my skin is adaptable because I have so many mixtures. And so, if I go in the sun for 5 minutes, I'm a whole other color. It's not
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is, because we're closer to the sun in Colombia, um, we are darker over there and we're lighter here. So, and the other problem is there's a lot of people who are um, trying so hard to look like the features that I have, very like ambiguous, that now I'm seen as white because they're trying so hard to look like people like me who have all these mixtures, and it's just like more erasure. Um,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, everybody's has their own red road. Everybody has their own way of reconnecting. I think if you don't do the work of reaching out, of learning about the struggles and advocating, um, if you don't do all those things, then that's a little problematic, because I feel like that's part of who we are. Uh, we can't not advocate, because I mean, if you actually know what's going on, how can you not? How can you not?
Yeah.
So I suggest, if you are reconnecting and you do want to claim Indigenous um, roots or descendants, or you claim yourself as Indigenous, you do have to put in the time. I mean, that's what the Red Road is about. It's about getting to that point where you understand why you are here still, because that's really what it is. We've
Mm-hmm.
been trying, they tried to extinct us, and we're still here because we fought, because other people before us fought. And if we don't recognize the shoulders we're on top of, then you know it's really easy to just feed into capitalism and imperialism, because
Yeah.
that's all you know. But if you know that there's a different way of being, I don't know how you can't advocate for that. I mean, it's life or death. These tribes will not be here much longer if we continue to treat them the way that we're treating them, as society, as the nation that we come from. And so, yeah, do the work, and you will be absorbed into the culture, because that's how our ancestors used to do it. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stories in the U.S. of people being found by natives and raised as native, and they never wanted to go back to their own culture because it was so terrible and different. And yeah, I mean, I think that blood quantum is really ruining a lot of beautiful moments where we can connect, and instead we're using it to say, no, no, you're not enough. And it's like, okay, so I'm not white, I don't have white privilege, I don't have a green card, I don't get all the benefits, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
non-native then, because I wasn't in the culture. So what am I? Who am I? Am I an
Yeah.
alien? you know
Mm-hmm.
so
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I was going to ask about that as far as like what criticism you must have like had, even maybe from other Colombians, because for me, there's a certain gang, not gang, but like these people that very much like want to push forward, like with Latinidad, push forward with like being a Hispanista and whatnot, and they'll go after my friend, my channel partner Juan, and say like, no, you're not native, blah blah blah, your skin, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, you're mixed, blah yada 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 yada, we're stupid, yada yada, you know. So we do face a lot of criticism from them, or opposition, I will say. And unfortunately, we've had certain folk who will say like we're stepping on sovereignty or things like that. And I'm like, no, we're not stepping on sovereignty. Like you don't get it. That's not what we want. But some people just don't listen, because this is our path. This is the red road that we are choosing. We're doing the necessary work, establishing the communication. I created this channel for a reason. And it wasn't for like, oh, I want to make money, yada, yada, yada. I want to like wake people up, because I've always said from the beginning that I'm tired of seeing other tribes and like these other communities go extinct. So something must be done. Unfortunately, we're not going to have everyone agree with what we say, but it is what it is.
I mean, Blood Quantum is creating the problem for the Wampanoag people who don't have enough people to register as a sovereign tribe, and they're the ones from the story of Thanksgiving, and they're struggling to get their numbers up to be federally recognized right now. And it's like, that's what Blood Quantum does. It erases, and I don't understand why they're using that, because, I mean, if you feel a calling to this, it's not for no reason. It's because something inside you is saying there's something else. Keep looking. And with the Muisca, they want people to commit to the tribe. They want people to come back and learn and say, hey, if I claim this as a tribe, then I need to do something for the community. They send people out and have them go to school, have them it's a commitment. They have to pledge to whatever they go out and do into the real world, that when they come back, it's to help the people as a whole, because it's community oriented. And what can you do to contribute to our society and our people? So you do have to put the work in, and that's just, I mean, they don't have Blood Quantum. You don't go there and say, look, I got blood. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
All right, you want to be part of who we are. We understand that there's a lot of children out there, because it was a split. One of the videos I sent you that was in Spanish. It depicts a story where half of the people that were part of the tribe stayed and thought they were gods, and so they understand that there are people out there, descendants of people who thought they were gods and stayed and followed their lead. And is that our fault that our ancestors chose to be on that side? It was for survival. It was for confusion. They weren't. I mean, if somebody came in, yeah, I mean, it's really shocking to meet people who are completely different than you. And that's sad that that's how it is. But I'm glad that they see that as still part of the tribe. People who come from these bloodlines that opted to be part of the culture.
No, I agree, and that's what with Juan Chiloa, my channel partner. His tribe, accepted him, and they welcome for people to come back to their roots and reconnect again. He's done, an extraordinary amount of work in what he's done, to where he's at today in San Luis Potosí, where his tribe's at, the Guachachil tribe. So yeah, again, like I also encourage others to do work as well. Like again, like it's nice to say that we're native and whatnot, but there has to be something from our end, as far as how we can reconnect as well. Yeah, so I was just curious though on the opposition that you might have faced from maybe Colombians or just others in general that want to say like, no, you're not native. Um, was it mostly from other Americans, Vivian, or
Not
I
really.
mean,
Americans. I'm sorry.
oh, you're good, no worries. Uh, I'll let
I don't know if it
Vivian.
was Vivian that you're talking to.
Yeah,
no, 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 go for it.
yeah. So, you can go, Juan.
So during COVID, that's when I started to realize who I really am, right, as a Colombian. And now part of that, you know, first I was like, all right, maybe I'm Misty, so okay, maybe I'm just having imposter syndrome, I don't know who I am. So then I started doing the research and I started talking to my mom and I started looking at her family tree. Then I started looking at the region where she was, looking at the demographics there, a little bit of the history, and then things started to just make sense. Um, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning little by little about what the Muisca were, where where they were located, their neighboring tribes, and that's the hardest part of being like a Colombian, right? I was born in America, but Colombian by blood, and then having a father that's white, and then having a mother that's ethnically indigenous, but also having Afro roots, just like BVM, that we're tri people. We have multiple races mixed.
Sure.
So I mean, I'm not gonna say, oh, I'm African. I'm not gonna say I'm white. So like, I'm gonna I'm gonna say I'm indigenous, but I'm gonna say that I have other bloodlines. But I
Mm,
haven't really gotten that much backlash. Just more about like where do I like belong. That's the only issue I've been kind of like facing. What tribe? Who do I connect with? And that's why I've been finding the Muisca really interesting because they seem like they're pretty open, but I haven't really done much research on that.
Don't worry, we'll go together one day.
yeah, that sounds good, right?
Sweet.
You've done a lot of
But
work so far, Juan. So you'll find more, and like Vivian said, you guys can go together sometime and find more information. So that's great. You've done a lot, Juan. And then Vivian, I guess I was going to ask you the same thing, like if what opposition from who exactly you faced, or just people in general.
Well, so I did my whole journey on Facebook, and when I came out as Indigenous, people were like, huh? And I was like, well, where do you think I was born? And people,
Mm,
even though I told them all the time I was Colombian, still were under the impression that I was somehow white, and I had to, really think about how this country just people for what they want them to be. Um, so I started sharing everything. I guess. I mean, I always advocated for my autonomy and like who I was, but people didn't listen. They only wanted to listen to what they thought I was. So I pulled out baby pictures because I wanted to start from the beginning. So I was like, okay, here we go. And so yeah, I shared how when I was born, I got a donkey. I had bunnies, I had chickens, I had parrots, I had a lamb, and how I got those things because my family said, you need these to survive. And I was like, is that a normal Colombian thing? Is that a normal American thing? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, now let's keep going. And I just showed them how like all the recipes that I ate growing up. My dad used to make me a soup that was made with milk, cilantro, pieces of bread, and eggs. And I found out that was a native dish, and just the fact that the way that we were eating, the gastronomy, all of it, it was. And I've just been slowly sharing it. as I learn, as I find things out, I would share it. And people were a little confused. They were like, I don't know about this. And I'm like, well, why do I look this way? Please let me know. And even Colombians were like, oh, that's not what we do in my family. And I'm like, I know. It's because I come from the country. I come from a place where not a lot of people have even Colombians don't ever hear what, like, one didn't know what Viterbo Cartas was. He was like, what? Who? His mom didn't either. She was like, what? And I was like, yeah, this is me. So, and then when I got into epigenetics, it was so much easier because I was like, okay, no hair. Please tell me why my ancestors have no hair. Please tell me why my ancestors needed me to be 5 feet tall and have big calves, have flat feet, and wide feet, and all of these things. And yeah, I mean that the milk not being a thing that settles good with my body, being able to. So this is a cool one. I can breathe better in higher altitudes because I lived in the mountains, both from my father's side in the Basque and also from um, my and I wanted to note on something before I forget. It's a common trait that the man is white Latino or whatever they want to call, and the woman is of mixed descent, just like how Juan's mom and how my mom. That's a typical thing because they would come, rape the women, take the women, and there you go. And so that's a recurring theme that I keep finding too, which also was something that happened with my family. And so yeah, I've just been like, every time I discover a new thing, I just share it because I'm in hopes that like somebody who's Colombian on my page will also be like, that's part of me too. I have that in my tradition. I have family members who in Monticello, New York, they move. They're so used to being nomadic that they live in different homes every season. They just move. I love that. I walked into their house one time when I was a little girl, and everybody was sitting in front of a bowl, and someone was doing arepas. Somebody was doing the aliño. Someone was making the avocados cut. Like somebody was chopping up cilantro, and they were making a big soup with what they would say gumbo. Sancocho is like a gumbo. You just throw everything in there, and it's like we're still living in the ways that our ancestors did. We just gotta like pay attention and look.
Yeah, it's on the food.
Yeah, the food too. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
they want to say that it's just Colombian. No. Not everybody eats those dishes. Not every. I'm used to eating organs. I'm used to eating tongue. Like none of my Colombian friends from Medellin or Bogota or Cali are like eat that, and it's like, why? Well, because we have different traditions. We come from different bloodlines. My bloodlines still have hymns and songs, and like for example, there's a story about La Mano Peluda, the hairy hand. That the hairy hand will get you in your sleep. What hairy hand? Colonizers had hairy bodies, hairy hands. It was a warning to the children to like stay clear of people with hairy hands because they like the children. And it's why would my family conserve that as an important thing to teach their kids? Why? So it's like it's undeniable the stuff that I'm bringing up because it's not everybody's typical Colombian experience. And so, I mean, I don't really allow people in my life that invalidate me anyway. So I have gotten a lot of pushback, but I mean, oh well.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah, that's what I think me and my
I'm
my
unbothered.
channel partner. Yeah, just push them away. Yeah, I like that method. No, I appreciate you sharing that with you. I didn't know that story, the hairy hand. So
Yeah, there's a lot of other ones. I mean, there's a song that is funny. My mom, I sang, she used to sing, amarillo, azul y rojo, colorado tengo este ojo, de vivir en un restrojo, comiendo pan y piojo. And it's yellow, blue, and red. Black and blue is my eye. From eating lice and bread, living in a trench. Does that sound like
I
a
thought it meant
story
like
of
a flea.
somebody who's a colonizer? Huh? Oh
I've
yeah,
heard that.
fleas.
Doesn't doesn't
Right.
doesn't puliero mean like a flea market or something?
No,
Or no?
amarillo fino, colorado tengo
Puliero?
piojo is lice. Piojo means
Gotcha.
lice. But yeah, that song doesn't sound like a song from a colonizer. So
In the trenches. Huh. No. You did
yeah,
say trenches, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Restrojo is like a ditch. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to learn more stories someday. Like it's
Oh,
really,
anytime. I'm full of them.
yeah. Thank thank you. Um, but I think that really does kind of go into like saying the importance of like having indigenous traditions and whatnot. If you're able to connect with that and holding those dearly and practicing them um, is also really important as well. Um, it's interesting for me. Like as an adoptee, I'm still like learning like my life and whatnot. But yeah, thank you for doing that. Uh, I think that we pretty much covered everything. We talked about like the importance of those that would be considered mestizo, reconnecting back to their indigenous roots, and that it's not so white and black as you might think. We can do this, and we can like create a better life. I think for more of us and
Absolutely.
bringing us together. So I'm proud of the work that we've all done, and like you said, Vivian, just brushing aside those people
Yeah.
that yeah, the haters. Yeah. That sounds good.
Unbothered
I like
by.
that. Like, adios. Bye bye. Um, but yeah, did you guys want to cover anything else before we wrapped up? Or I think we were going to.
Um, I don't know. I wanted to mention something that happened on TikTok recently where there was someone who was Dene Navajo, and they were telling a story about how a people came in to their territory, and they seemed very dangerous, and they just gave them land because they didn't know what to do with them. Then they turned around and attacked them and hurt them, and they were like, "Those people are very like we need to stay away from them." And then they left, and they never saw them again. Or well, they did see them again, but they left. And then you hear the story of the Mexica, the Aztec, and how they found their land, and it's like, huh, that story sounds very similar. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were in the thread on TikTok going, oh my god, what? That's the story. That's it. That's a
Yeah.
connection. And then we were like, why are we thinking that these colonizer names have anything to do with our culture? Because when we take those apart and we realize that we were in the same vicinity and that, of course, we have stories about each other, and then now TikTok is providing that to be a thing. There was another guy who was saying, oh, I really believe that we have a closer connection to Polynesia and like the other natives on the other side of like Australia and Micronesia. And then when I said, hey, watch this show because there's a link, there's a DNA link. So what you're saying is correct. Because he was like, we look the same, we have the same traditions. Like the Embera people, their regalia is really similar to regalia from Polynesia. So it's like we are not related. If we have stories, we have DNA. It's like trading. We were trading. It's also like why else would everything be shared in so many different cultures? Like maybe we were communicating,
Yeah.
and that was part of the erasure, the conquest. You know?
Yeah, I've heard, again, I brought this up. I think that I've heard stories of people, natives off the coast of Ecuador, pre colonial times, were trading with those from Polynesia, like in the Polynesian islands, which is really freaking impressive and fascinating that You know, we didn't have like motor boats, or we didn't have the giant ships that Europeans and Asians had, but yet we were able to make contact with like people from like the Pacific Ocean is extremely big. So the fact that we're able to reach them is just like insane to me.
Well, the other
So
thing
it's
you have
just
to realize too is we are in the process of coming apart since like Pangea. So we
sure.
were a lot closer, you know, in the 1500s or and prior. So we need to start thinking about the fact that it may be difficult now, but it might have not been difficult back then.
That's true. Yeah, or yeah, even like thousands of years before that, or hundreds of years before like colonization as well. Yeah, I agree with that too. Um, so it's just really crazy. Like I think there's a lot more. I mean, there is a lot more to uncover, you know, of our history across the Americas. Um, so I do like thank you guys and like other historians out there that are revealing more of the truth, because a lot of it I think is just covered up. So there's more hope. But yeah, thank you again for sharing. I wanted to say, are your earrings indigenous or native made or from
Yeah,
Colombia? Or yeah,
yeah.
I like them a lot.
Um,
I know I said that
my
already.
family always brings me gifts back that are indigenous gifts, and I'm like, okay, can you not see what you're doing? You're sending me indigenous gifts, handmade gifts. Why
Mm.
aren't you sending me other things? Like, please connect that in your brains. Maybe it's because that's what we honor, that's what we hold dear and have like a connection to.
Yeah.
So,
No, they're very beautiful. So yeah, just want to bring that out there. I like them all. Yeah, you're welcome. Um, but yeah, did you guys have anything else? I love this conversation that we've had. I think we brought up a lot
I
of
mean, I
great
could
topics.
go on forever. I'm glad that you asked me to come on again if I want to because I, I I'm a little encyclopedia and I love sharing and I
Of
think
course.
that communicating like this, especially look at our intersectionality. I was born in Colombia, brought up in Colombian culture, like huge, like barely. I didn't even touch American culture until I was like 18 and left the house. So like that's my experience. Juan has first generation experience, already born here with his,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from back home, and then now you're an adoptee. So look at how much intersectionality we have right now. This is amazing moments happening that will ripple effect for even longer than us.
Oh yeah, no, I love that you said that. I agree too. It is crazy how we all came together through like different paths of life. But I guess that's all part of the red road, right? So yeah, Vivian, thank you so much for coming on. And Juan, it's always a pleasure as well. Um, and all those that are watching, thank you all. Thank you for supporting our channel. Comments and likes are always appreciated, even those little dislikes. So, with that being said, I think we're going to say good night and goodbye.